Good afternoon, grizzly bears. Or good evening, good night, good morning. Whatever it is, where you are. Where I am, it is afternoon, and we are reading some epic poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, part of my epic quest to read the complete works of Longfellow. And he wrote these epic poems about legend and history, and they were quite popular in his day, from what I understand. But I think epic poems feel a little out of place in the modern world. We don't need poems for storytelling anymore. I think there are, honestly, better ways to tell stories. Especially, there are better ways to relate history than poetry. But they're nice poems to read anyway, just quite long, so I devoted quite a lot of the previous stream to reading this epic poem about King Olaf and his epic quest to spread Christianity throughout Scandinavia and Northern Europe. And I am only about halfway through that quest. So, my quest being to read the poem, not to spread Christianity. Just to be clear, that is not my objective. That was, however, King Olaf's objective. So, we resume with part 12 of this poem about King Olaf. And part 12 is called King Olaf's Christmas. At Trondheim, Olaf the king heard the bells of Yuletide ring as he sat in his banquet hall, drinking the nut-brown ale, with his bearded berserks hale and tall. 3 days his Yuletide feasts he held with bishops and priests, and his horn filled up to the brim, but the ale was never too strong, nor the saga man's tale too long for him. Or his drinking horn the sign he made of the cross divine, as he drank and muttered his prayers. But the berserks evermore made the sign of the hammer of Thor over theirs. The gleams of the firelight dance upon the helmet and hauberk and lance, and laugh in the eyes of the king, and he cries to Halfred the Skald, gray-bearded, wrinkled and bald, "Sing, sing me a song divine, with a sword in every line, and this shall be thy reward." and he loosened the belt at his waist, and in front of the singer placed his sword. Quernbiter of Hakon the Good, wherewith at a stroke he hewed the millstone through and through, and footbreadth of Thorolf the Strong were neither so broad, nor so long, nor so true. Then the skald took his harp and sang, and loud through the music rang the sound of that shining word, and the harp strings a clangor made, as if they were struck with the blade of a sword. And the berserks round about broke forth into a shout that made the rafters ring. They smote with their fists on the board and shouted, "Long live the sword and the king." But the king said, "O my son, I miss the bright word in one of thy measures and thy rhymes." And Halfred the skald replied, "In another 'twas multiplied 3 times." Then King Olaf raised the hilt of iron, cross-shaped and gilt, and said, "Do not refuse. Count well the gain and the loss. Thor's hammer or Christ's cross. Choose." And Halfred the skald said, "This, in the name of the Lord I kiss, who on it was crucified." And a shout went round the board, "In the name of Christ the Lord who died." Then over the waste of snows the noonday sun uprose, through the driving mists revealed, like the lifting of the host, by incense clouds almost concealed. On the shining wall a vast and shadowy cross was cast from the hilt of the lifted sword, and in foaming cups of ale the berserks drank, "Was hail to the Lord." That was King Olaf's Christmas, Part 12 of Longfellow's epic poem about King Olaf. Part 13 is called The Building of the Long Serpent. Thorberg Skafting, master builder, in his shipyard by the sea, whistling said, "It would bewilder any man but Thorberg Skafting, any man but me." Near him lay the dragon stranded, built of old by Rod the Strong, and King Olaf had commanded he should build another dragon, twice as long and large. Therefore whistled Thorberg Skafting, and he sat with half-closed eyes, and his head turned sideways, drafting that new vessel for King Olaf, twice the dragon's size. Round him busily hewed and hammered, mallet huge and heavy axe. Workmen laughed and sang and clamored, whirred the wheels that into rigging spun the shining flax. All this tumult heard the master. It was music to his ear. Fancy whispered all the faster, "Men shall hear of Thorberg Skafting for 100 year." Workmen, sweating at the forges, fashioned iron bolt and bar. Like a warlock's midnight orgies, smoked and bubbled the black cauldron with the boiling tar. Did the warlocks mingle in it, Thorberg scoffing any curse? Could you not be gone a minute, but some mischief must be doing, turning bad to worse? 'Twas an ill wind that came wafting from his homestead words of woe. To his farm went Thorberg scoffing, oft repeating to his workmen, "Build ye thus and so." After long delays returning came the master back by night, to his shipyard longing, yearning, hurried he. He did not leave it till the morning's light. "Come and see my ship, my darling," on the morrow said the king. "Finished now from keel to carling. Never yet was seen in Norway such a wondrous thing." In the shipyard, idly talking, at the ship the workmen stared. Someone, all their labor bulking, down her sides had cut deep gashes. Not a plank was spared. "Death be to the evildoer," with an oath King Olaf spoke, "but rewards to his pursuer." And with wrath his face grew redder than his scarlet cloak. Straight the master builder smiling answered thus the angry king, "Cease blaspheming and reviling. Olaf, it was Thorberg scoffing who has done this thing." Then he chipped and smoothed the planking till the king delighted swore, with much lauding and much thanking, "Handsomer is now my dragon than she was before." 70 ells and 4 extended on the grass the vessel's keel. High above it, gilt and splendid, rose the figurehead ferocious, with its crest of steel. Then they launched her from the trestles, in the shipyard by the sea. She was the grandest of all vessels. Never ship was built in Norway half so fine as she. The Long Serpent was she christened, mid the roar of cheer on cheer. They who to the saga listened heard the name of Thorberg scoffing for 100 years. Part 14. The Crew of the Long Serpent. Safe at anchor in Drontheim Bay, King Olaf's fleet assembled lay, and striped with white and blue, downward fluttered sail and banner, as alights the screaming lanner. Lustily cheered in their wild manner the Long Serpent's crew. Her forecastle man was Ulf the Red. Like a wolf's was his shaggy head, his teeth as large and white, his beard of grey and russet blended, round as a swallow's nest descended. As standard bearer he defended Olaf's flag in the fight. Near him, Kolbjorn had his place, like the king in garb and face, so gallant and so hale. Every cabin boy and varlet wondered at his cloak of scarlet. Like a river frozen and starlit, gleamed his coat of mail. By the bulkhead, tall and dark, stood Thrandraim of Telemark, a figure gaunt and grand. On his hairy arm imprinted was an anchor azure tinted, like Thor's hammer, huge and dinted, was his brawny hand. Einar Tamberskelver bare to the winds his golden hair, by the mainmast stood, graceful was his form and slender, and his eyes were deep and tender as a woman's in the splendor of her maidenhood. In the forehold, Bjorn and Bork watched the sailors at their work. Heavens, how they swore! 30 men they each commanded, iron-sinewed, horny-handed, shoulders broad and chests expanded, tugging at the oar. These, and many more like these, with King Olaf sailed the seas, till the waters vast filled them with a vague devotion, with the freedom and the motion, with the roll and roar of ocean, and the sounding blast. When they landed from the fleet, how they roared through Drontheim's street, boisterous as the gale. How they laughed and stamped and pounded, till the tavern roof resounded, and the host looked on astounded as they drank the ale. Never saw the wild North Sea such a gallant company sail its billows blue. Never, while they cruised and quarreled, old King Gorm or Bluetooth Herald owned a ship so well apparelled, boasted such a crew. Hello, Cookie. Welcome back. How are you doing today? I'm still reading the same poem I was reading yesterday. An epic poem about King Olaf. That was part 14. Coming up next is part 15, which is called A Little Bird in the Air. A little bird in the air is singing of Thyri the fair, the sister of Sven the Dane, and the song of his garrulous bird in the streets of the town is heard, and repeated again and again. Hoist up your sails of silk, and flee away from each other. To King Burislav, it is said, was the beautiful Thyri wed, and a sorrowful bride went she. And after a week and a day, she has fled away and away from his town by the stormy sea. Hoist up your sails of silk, and flee away from each other. They say that through heat and through cold, through weald, they say, and through wold, by day and by night, they say, she has fled, and the gossips report she has come to King Olaf's court, and all the town is in dismay. Hoist up your sails of silk, and flee away from each other. It is whispered King Olaf has seen, has talked with the beautiful queen, and they wonder how it will end. For surely if here she remain, it is war with King Sven the Dane and King Burislav the Vend. Hoist up your sails of silk, and flee away from each other. O greatest wonder of all, it is published in hamlet and hall. It roars like a flame that is fanned. The king, yes, Olaf the king, has wedded her with his ring, and Thyre is queen in the land. Hoist up your sails of silk, and flee away from each other. Part 16. Queen Thyre and the Angelica stalks. Northward, over Drontheim, flew the clamorous seagulls. Sang the lark and linnet from the meadows green. Weeping in her chamber, lonely and unhappy, sat the drottning Thyre, sat King Olaf's queen. In at all the windows streamed the pleasant sunshine. On the roof above her softly cooed the dove. But the sound she heard not, nor the sunshine heeded, for the thoughts of Thyre were not thoughts of love. Then King Olaf entered, beautiful as morning. Like the sun at Easter shone his happy face. In his hand he carried Angelicas uprooted, with delicious fragrance, filling all the place. Like a rainy midnight, sat the drottning Thyre. Even the smile of Olaf could not cheer her gloom, nor the stalks he gave her with a gracious gesture, and with words as pleasant as their own perfume. In her hands he placed them, and her jeweled fingers through the green leaves glistened, like the dews of morn. But she cast them from her, haughty and indignant. On the floor she threw them with a look of scorn. Richer presents, said she, gave King Harold Gormson to the queen my mother, than such worthless weeds. When he ravaged Norway, laying waste the kingdom, seizing scat and treasure for her royal needs. But thou darest not venture through the sound to Vendland, my domains to rescue from King Burislav. Lest King Svend of Denmark, forked beard my brother, scatter all thy vessels as the wind to chaff. Then up sprang King Olaf. Like a reindeer bounding with an oath, he answered thus the luckless queen. Never yet did Olaf fear King Svend of Denmark. This right hand shall hail him by his forked chin. Then he left the chamber, thundering through the doorway. Loud his steps resounded down the outer stair. Smarting with the insult, through the streets of Drontheim, strode he red and wrathful, with his stately air. All his ships he gathered, summoned all his forces, making his war levy in the region round. Down the coast of Norway like a flock of seagulls sailed the fleet of Olaf through the Danish Sound. With his own hand fearless, steered he the long serpent, strained the creaking cordage, bent each boom and gaff, till in Venland landing, the domains of Thyre he redeemed and rescued from King Burislav. Then, said Olaf, laughing, not 10 yoke of oxen have the power to draw us, like a woman's hair. Nor will I confess it. Better things are jewels than angelica stalks are for a queen to wear. I feel pretty conflicted about these poems. King Olaf is not a good person. But he seems to be celebrated to some extent in these poems. And his conquest of Scandinavia is celebrated. And that's a little off-putting to me. Part 17. King Svend of the Forked Bear. Loudly the sailors cheered, Svend of the forked beard, as with his fleet he steered southward to Vendland, where with their courses hauled, all were together called, under the Isle of Svald near to the mainland. After Queen Gunhild's death, so the old saga saith, plighted King Svend to his faith, to Sigrid the haughty, and to avenge his bride, soothing her wounded pride, over the waters wide, King Olaf sought he. Still on her scornful face, blushing with deep disgrace, bore she the crimson trace of Olaf's gauntlet. Like a malignant star blazing in heaven afar, red shone the angry scar under her frontlet. Oft to King Svend she spake, for thine own honour's sake, shalt thou swift vengeance take on the vile coward, until the king at last, gusty and overcast, like a tempestuous blast, threatened and lowered. Soon as the spring appeared, Svend of the forked beard, high his red standard reared, eager for battle, while every warlike Dane, seizing his arms again, left all unsown the grain, unhoused the cattle. Likewise, the Swedish king summoned in haste a thing, weapons and men to bring in aid of Denmark. Eerie the Norsemen too, as the war tidings flew, sailed with a chosen crew from Lapland and Fenmark. So upon Easter Day sailed the 3 kings away, out of the sheltered bay in the bright season. With them Earl Sigvald came, eager for spoil and fame. Pity that such a name stooped to such treason. Safe under Svald at last, now were their anchors cast. Safe from the sea and blast, plotted the 3 kings. While with a base intent, southward Earl Sigvald went, on a foul errand bent, unto the sea kings. thence to hold on his course unto King Olaf's force, lying within the horse mouths of Stedhaven, him to ensnare and bring unto the Danish king, who his dead corpse would fling forth to the raven. Part 18. King Olaf and Earl Sigvald. On the grey sea sands King Olaf stands. Northward and seaward he points with his hands. With the eddy and whirl the sea tides curl, washing the sandals of Sigvald the Earl. The mariners shout, the ships swung about, the yards are all hoisted, the sails flutter out. The war horns are played, the anchors are weighed. Like moths in the distance, the sails flit and fade. The sea is like lead, the harbor lies dead, as a corpse on the seashore, whose spirit has fled. On that fatal day, the histories say, 70 vessels sailed out of the bay. But soon scattered wide, o'er the billows they ride, while Sigvald and Olaf sail side by side. Cried the Earl, follow me, I your pilot will be, for I know all the channels where flows the deep sea. So into the strait, where his foes lie in wait, gallant King Olaf sails to his fate. Then the sea fog veils the ships and their sails. Queen Sigrid the haughty, thy vengeance prevails. Part 19. King Olaf's war horns. Strike the sails, King Olaf said. Never shall men of mine take flight. Never away from battle I fled, never away from my foes. Let God dispose of my life in the fight. Sound the horns, said Olaf the king, and suddenly through the drifting broom the blare of the horns began to ring, like the terrible trumpet shock of Ragnarok on the day of doom. Louder and louder the war horns sang over the level floor of the flood. All the sails came down with a clang, and there in the mist overhead the sun hung red as a drop of blood. Drifting down on the Danish fleet, 3 together the ships were lashed, so that neither should turn and retreat. In the midst, but in front of the rest, the burnished crest of the serpent flashed. King Olaf stood on the quarterdeck, with bow of ash and arrows of oak. His gilded shield was without a fleck, his helmet inlaid with gold, and in many a fold hung his crimson cloak. On the forecastle, Ulf the Red watched the lashing of the ships. If the serpent lie so far ahead, we shall have hard work of it here, said he with a sneer on his bearded lips. King Olaf laid an arrow on string. Have I a coward on board, said he, Shoot it another way, O king, sullenly answered Ulf, the old sea-wolf. You have need of me. In front came Svend, the king of the Danes, sweeping down with his 50 rowers. To the right, the Swedish king with his thanes, and on board of the Iron Beard, Earl Eric steered to the left with his oars. These soft Danes and Swedes, said the king, at home with their wives had better stay than come within reach of my serpent's sting. But where Orc the Norseman leads heroic deeds will be done today. Then, as together the vessels crashed, Eric severed the cables of hide with which King Olaf's ships were lashed, and left them to drive and drift with the current swift of the outward tide. Louder the war horns growl and snarl, sharper the dragons bite and sting. Eric, the son of Hakon Jarl, a death drink salt as the sea, pledges to thee, Olaf, the king. Part 20. I'll take a brief break here for some water. Okay. Part 20 is called Einar Tamberskelver. It was Einar Tamberskelver stood beside the mast. From his yew-bow, tipped with silver, flew the arrows fast, aimed at Eric, unavailing, as he sat concealed, half behind the quarter railing, half behind his shield. First, an arrow stuck the tiller just above his head. Sing, O Eyvind, Skaldespiller. Then Earl Eric said, sing the song of Hakon dying, sing his funeral wail. And another arrow flying grazed his coat of mail. Turning to a Lapland yeoman as the arrow passed, said Earl Eric, shoot that bowman standing by the mast. Sooner than the word was spoken flew the yeoman's shaft. Einar's bow in twain was broken. Einar only laughed. What was that? Said Olaf, standing on the quarterdeck. Something heard I like the stranding of a shattered wreck. Einar then, the arrow taking from the loosened string, answered, that was Norway breaking from thy hand, O king. Thou art but a poor diviner, straightway Olaf said. Take my bow, and swifter, Einar, let thy shafts be sped. Of his bows the fairest choosing, reached he from above. Einar saw the blood drops oozing through his iron glove. But the bow was thin and narrow. At the first essay, O'er its head he drew the arrow, flung the bow away, said with hot and angry temper flushing in his cheek, Olaf, for so great a camper, are thy bows too weak? Then with smile of joy defiant on his beardless lip, scaled he, light and self-reliant, Eric's dragon ship. Loose his golden locks were flowing, bright his armor gleamed, like Saint Michael, overthrowing Lucifer he seemed. King Olaf's death drink. All day has the battle raged. All day have the ships engaged. But not yet is assuaged the vengeance of Eric the Earl. The decks with blood are red, the arrows of death are sped, the ships are filled with the dead, and the spears the champions hurl. They drift as wrecks on the tide, the grappling irons are plied, the boarders climb up the side, the shouts are feeble and few. Ah, never shall Norway again see her sailors come back o'er the main. They all lie wounded or slain, or asleep in the billows blue. On the deck stands Olaf the King. Around him whistle and sing the spears that the foemen fling, and the stones they hurl with their hands. In the midst of the stones and the spears, Kolbiorn the marshal appears. His shield in the air he uprears, by the side of King Olaf he stands. Over the slippery wreck of the long serpent's deck sweeps Eric with hardly a check. His lips with anger are pale. He hews with his axe at the mast, till it falls, with sails overcast, like a snow-covered pine in the vast dim forests of Orkadale. Seeking King Olaf then, he rushes aft with his men, as a hunter into the den of the bear where he stands at bay. Remember, Jarl Haken, he cries, when low on his wondering eyes 2 kingly fingers arise, 2 Olafs in warlike array. Then Kolbiorn speaks in the ear of King Olaf a word of cheer, in a whisper that none may hear, with a smile on his tremulous lip. Two shields raised high in the air, 2 flashes of golden hair, 2 scarlet meteors glare, and both have leaped from the ship. Earl Eric's men in the boats seize Kolbiorn's shield as it floats, and cry from their hairy throats, "See, it is Olaf the King." While far on the opposite side floats another shield on the tide, like a jewel set in the wide sea current's eddying ring. There is told a wonderful tale, how the king stripped off his mail, like leaves of the brown sea kale, and he swam beneath the main. But the young grew old and gray, and never by night or day, in his kingdom of Norway, was King Olaf seen again. Part 22 is called The Nun of Nidaros. And I think 22, yes, this is the last part of Olaf's story. In the convent of Drontheim, alone in her chamber, knelt Astrid the abbess. At midnight, adoring, beseeching, entreating the Virgin and Mother. She heard in the silence the voice of one speaking, without in the darkness, in gusts of the night wind, now louder, now nearer, now lost in the distance. The voice of a stranger, it seemed as she listened, of someone who answered, beseeching, imploring, a cry from afar off she could not distinguish. The voice of St. John, the beloved disciple, who wandered and waited the Master's appearance, alone in the darkness, unsheltered and friendless. It is accepted, the angry defiance, the challenge of battle. It is accepted, but not with the weapons of war that thou wieldest. Cross against corslet, love against hatred, peace cry for war cry. Patience is powerful. He that overcometh hath power o'er the nations. As torrents in summer, half dried in their channels, suddenly rise, and through the sky is still cloudless, for rain has been falling far off at their fountains. So hearts that are fainting grow full to o'erflowing, and they that behold it marvel, and know not that God at their fountains, far off, has been raining. Stronger than steel is the sword of the Spirit. Swifter than arrows, the light of the truth is. Greater than anger is love, and subdueth. Thou art a phantom, a shape of the sea mist, a shape of the brumal rain and the darkness, fearful and formless. Day dawns, and thou art not. The dawn is not distant, nor is the night starless. Love is eternal. God is still God, and his faith shall not fail us. Christ is eternal. And that, at last, is the end of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's saga of King Olaf. It's interesting to me that he writes an epic poem about the warlord, King Olaf, forcibly spreading Christianity by the sword. And he devotes 21 parts of that epic poem to cataloging Olaf's various conquests, glorifying them, perhaps, celebrating his saga, and romanticizing his final overthrowing in part 21. And then tacks on part 22 at the end here, where he reminds us that war is bad, peace is good. Thanks, Henry. That's a nice reminder. War is bad, peace is good. I don't know, maybe don't write a romantic epic poem about warlords, if you really believe that. Alrighty. On that note, now that I have once again insulted Longfellow, I don't think I'm going to apologize this time, though. I will take a very quick break. I need to refill my water. And then we will come back and get back to normal poems now that we are done with that epic poem. Be right back. Alrighty. Now I'm going to skip over some additional epic poems because I know I set out to read the complete works of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, but honestly, I find the poems he writes about history to be a little bit offensive. And I don't think they should be celebrated. Also, they're just very long. So I'm skipping over some more of those. Hopefully to find some real poems again. Okay, well, here we have a piece of an epic poem that looks also like pretty good poetry, so I will read it. It's called The Musician's Tale, the Ballad of Carmelhan. Part 1. At Stralsund, by the Baltic Sea, within the sandy bar, at sunset of a summer's day, ready for sea at anchor lay the good ship Valdemar. The sunbeams danced upon the waves and played along her side, and through the cabin windows streamed in ripples of golden light that seemed the ripple of the tide. There sat the captain with his friends, old skippers Brown and Hale, who smoked and grumbled o'er their grog, and talked of iceberg and of fog, of calm and storm and gale. And one was spinning a sailor's yarn about Klabauterman, the kobold of the sea, a sprite invisible to normal sight, who o'er the rigging ran. Sometimes he hammered in the hold, sometimes upon the mast, sometimes abeam, sometimes abaft, or at the bows he sang and laughed, and made all tight and fast. He helped the sailors at their work, and toiled with jovial din. He helped them hoist and reef the sails. He helped them stow the casks and bales, and heave the anchor in. But woe unto the lazy louts, the idlers of the crew. Them to torment was his delight, and worry them by day and night, and pinch them black and blue. And woe to him whose mortal eyes Cloboterman behold. It is a certain sign of death. The cabin boy here held his breath. He felt his blood run cold. The jolly skipper paused a while, and then again began. There is a spectre ship, quoth he, a ship of the dead that sails the sea, and it is called the Carmelhan. A ghostly ship with a ghostly crew, in tempests she appears, and before the gale or against the gale, she sails without a rag of sail, without a helmsman steers. She haunts the Atlantic north and south, but mostly the mid-sea, where three great rocks rise bleak and bare, like furnace chimneys in the air, and are called the Chimneys for Three. And ill betide the luckless ship that meets the Carmelhan. Over her decks the seas will leap. She must go down into the deep, and perish, mouse and man. The captain of the Valdemar laughed loud with merry heart. I should like to see this ship, said he. I should like to find these chimneys three that are marked down in the chart. I have sailed right over the spot, he said, with a good stiff breeze behind, when the sea was blue and the sky was clear. You can follow my course by these pinholes here, and never a rock could find. And then he swore a dreadful oath. He swore by the kingdoms three, that should he meet the Carmelhan, he would run her down, although he ran right into eternity. All this, while passing to and fro, the cabin boy had heard. He lingered at the door to hear, and drank in all with greedy ear, and pondered every word. He was a simple country lad, but of a roving mind. Oh, it must be like heaven, thought he, to those far off foreign lands to see, and fortune seek and find. But in the forecastle, when he heard the mariners blaspheme, he thought of home, he thought of God, and his mother under the churchyard sod, and wished it were a dream. One friend on board that ship had he. 'Twas the Cloboterman, who saw the Bible in his chest, and made a sign upon his breast, all evil things to ban. The cabin windows have grown blank as eyeballs of the dead. No more the glancing sunbeams burn on the gilt letters of the stern, but on the figurehead, on Valdemar victorious, who looketh with disdain to see his image in the tide, dismembered float from side to side, and reunite again. It is the wind, those skippers said, that swings the vessel so. It is the wind, it freshens fast. 'Tis time to say farewell at last. 'Tis time for us to go. They shook the captain by the hand. Good luck, they cried. Each face was like the setting sun, as broad and red they one by one went o'er the vessel's side. The sun went down, the full moon rose, serene o'er field and flood, and all the winding creeks and bays and broad sea meadows seemed ablaze. The sky was red as blood. The southwest wind blew fresh and fair as wind could be, bound for Odessa or the bar, with all sail set to the Valdemar, went proudly out to sea. The lovely moon climbs up the sky as one who walks in dreams, a tower of marble in her light, a wall of black, a wall of white, the stately vessel seems. Low down upon the sandy coast, the lights begin to burn, and now uplifted high in air they kindle with a fiercer glare, and now drop far astern. The dawn appears, the land is gone, the sea is all around. Then on each hand low hills of sand emerge and form another land. She steereth through the sound. Through Kattegat and Skagerrak she flitteth like a ghost. By day and night, by night and day, she bounds, she flies upon her way along the English coast. Cape Finisterre is drawing near. Cape Finisterre is past. Into the open ocean stream she floats, the vision of a dream, too beautiful to last. Suns rise and set and rise, and yet there is no land in sight. The liquid planets overhead burn brighter now, the moon is dead, and longer stays the night. And now, along the horizon's edge, mountains of cloud uprose, black as with forests underneath. Above their sharp and jagged teeth were white as drifted snows. Unseen behind them sank the sun, but flushed each snowy peak a little while with rosy light that faded slowly from the sight as blushes from the cheek. Black grew the sky, all black, all black. The clouds were everywhere. There was a feeling of suspense in nature, a mysterious sense of terror in the air. And all on board the Valdemar was still as still could be, save when the dismal ship bell tolled, as ever and anon she rolled and lurched into the sea. The captain, up and down the deck, went striding to and fro, now watched the compass at the wheel, now lifted his hand to feel which way the wind might blow. And now he looked up at the sails, and now upon the deep. In every fiber of his frame, he felt the storm before it came. He had no thought of sleep. 8 bells, and suddenly abaft was a great rush of rain, making the ocean white with spume. In darkness, like the day of doom, on came the hurricane. The lightning flashed from cloud to cloud and rent the sky in two. A jagged flame, a single jet of white fire, like a bayonet, that pierced the eyeballs through. Then all around was dark again, and blacker than before. But in that single flash of light, he had beheld a fearful sight, and thought of the oath he swore. For right ahead lay the ship of the dead, the ghostly Carmelhan. Her masts were stripped, her yards were bare, and on her bowsprit, poised in the air, sat the Clebotterman. Her crew of ghosts was all on deck, or clambering up the shrouds. The boatswain's whistle, the captain's hail, were like the piping of the gale, and thunder in the clouds. And close behind the Carmelhan, there rose up from the sea, as from a foundered ship of stone, 3 bare and splintered masts alone. They were the Chimneys 3. And onward dashed the Valdemar, and leaped into the dark. A denser mist, a colder blast, a little shudder, and she had passed right through the phantom bark. She cleft in twain the shadowy hulk, but cleft it unaware, as when, careering to her nest, the seagull severs with her breast the unresisting air. Again the lightning flashed. Again they saw the Carmelhan, whole as before, in hull and spar, but now on board of the Valdemar stood the Clebotterman. And they all knew their doom was sealed. They knew that death was near. Some prayed who never prayed before, and some they wept, and some they swore, and some were mute with fear. Then suddenly there came a shock, and louder than wind or sea, a cry burst from the crew on deck, as she dashed and crashed, a hopeless wreck, upon the Chimneys 3. The storm and night were past, the light to streak the east began. The cabin boy, picked up at sea, survived the wreck, and only he to tell of the Carmelhan. That was kind of a fun poem, but unfortunately I kind of screwed up right at the end there when my throat betrayed me. That was The Musician's Tale, the Ballad of Carmelhan. That might be a good one to read on Halloween, if I'm still streaming when Halloween comes. Maybe I'll read that one, and maybe I won't screw it up. Alrighty. I'm skipping some more of his epic poetry because I simply don't like it very much. And I'm looking for some actual poems. My goodness, these poems are actually all part of a larger series of epic poems. Several stories interleaved here. Okay, and finally, we are out of the historical poems and back into more pleasant poems. The first one is Flower de Luce. Beautiful lily, dwelling by still rivers, or solitary mere, or where the sluggish meadow brook delivers its waters to the weir. Thou laughest at the mill, the whir and worry of spindle and of loom, and the great wheel that toils amid the hurry and rushing of the flame. Born in the purple, born to joy and pleasance, thou dost not toil nor spin, but markest glad and radiant with thy presence the meadow and the linn. The wind blows and uplifts thy drooping banner, and round thee throng and run the rushes, the green yeomen of thy manor, the outlaws of the sun. The burnished dragonfly is thine attendant, and tilts against the field, and down the listed sunbeam rides resplendent, with steel blue mail and shield. Thou art the iris, fair among the fairest, who, armed with golden rod, and winged with the celestial azure bearest the message of some god. Thou art the muse, who, far from crowded cities, hauntest the sylvan streams, playing on pipes of reed the artless ditties that come to us as dreams. O flower de luce, bloom on and let the river linger to kiss thy feet. O flower of song, bloom on and make forever the world more fair and sweet. The next poem is called Palingenesis. I lay upon the headland height and listened to the incessant sobbing of the sea in caverns under me, and watched the waves with that tossed and fled and glistened until the rolling meadows of amethyst melted away in mist. Then suddenly, as one from sleep, I started, for round about me all the sunny capes seemed peopled with the shapes of those whom I had known in days departed, apparelled in the loveliness which gleams on faces seen in dreams. A moment only, and the light and glory faded away, and the disconsolate shore stood lonely as before, and the wild roses of the promontory around me shuddered in the wind and shed their petals of pale red. There was an old belief that in the embers of all things their primordial form exists, and cunning alchemists could recreate the rose with all its members from its own ashes, but without the bloom, without the lost perfume. Ah me, what wonder-working occult science can from the ashes in our hearts once more the rose of youth restore. What craft of alchemy can bid defiance to time and change, and for a single hour renew this phantom flower? Oh, give me back, I cried, the vanished splendors, the breath of morn, and the exultant strife, when the swift stream of life bounds o'er its rocky channel and surrenders the pond with all its lilies for the leap into the unknown deep. And the sea answered with a lamentation, like some old prophet wailing at it said, Alas, thy youth is dead. It breathes no more. Its heart has no pulsation. In the dark places, with the dead of old, it lies, forever cold. Then said I, from its consecrated cerements, I will not drag the sacred dust again, only to give me pain. But, still remembering all the lost endearments, go on my way like one who looks before and turns to weep no more. Into what land of harvests, what plantations, bright with autumnal foliage and the glow of sunsets burning low, beneath what midnight skies whose constellations light up the spacious avenues between this world and the unseen? Amid what friendly greetings and caresses, what households, though not alien yet not mine, what bowers of rest divine, to what temptations in lone wildernesses, what famine of the heart, what pain and loss, the bearing of what cross? I do not know, nor will I vainly question those pages of the mystic book which hold the story still untold, but without rash conjecture or suggestion, turn its last leaves in reverence and good heed, until the end I read. That was Palingenesis by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Next we have The Bridge of Cloud. Burn, O evening hearth, and waken pleasant visions, as of old. Through the house by winds be shaken, safe I keep this room of gold. Ah, no longer wizard fancy builds her castles in the air, luring me by necromancy up the never-ending stair. But instead, she builds me bridges over many a dark ravine, where beneath the gusty ridges cataracts dash and roar unseen, and I cross them little heeding blast of wind or torrent's roar, as I follow the receding footsteps that have gone before. Naught avails the imploring gesture, naught avails the cry of pain. When I touch the flying vesture, 'tis the gray robe of the rain. Baffled, I return, and leaning over parapets of cloud, watch the mist that intervening wraps the valley in its shroud. and the sounds of life ascending faintly, vaguely meet the ear, murmur of bells and voices blending with the rush of waters near. Well I know what there lies hidden, every tower and town and farm, and again the land forbidden reassumes its vanished charm. Well I know the secret places and the nests in hedge and tree, at what doors are friendly faces, in what hearts are thoughts of me. Through the mist and darkness sinking, blown by wind and beaten by shower, down I fling the thought I'm thinking. Down I toss this alpine flower. That was The Bridge of Cloud. Another poem worth reading. Thank you, Brundlefly. I do seem to be feeling fine in general. It's just streaming doesn't seem to be working all that well for my throat these days. But I feel like I can keep going a bit. The next poem is called Hawthorne, dated May 23rd, 1864. How beautiful it was, that one bright day in the long week of rain. Though all its splendor could not chase away the omnipresent pain. The lovely town was white with apple blooms, and the great elms o'erhead dark shadows wove on their aerial looms, shot through with golden thread. Across the meadows, by the gray old manse, the historic river flowed. I was as one who wanders in a trance, unconscious of his road. The faces of familiar friends seemed strange. Their voices I could hear, and yet the words they uttered seemed to change their meaning to my ear. For the one face I looked for was not there. The one low voice was mute. Only an unseen presence filled the air and baffled my pursuit. Now I look back, the meadow, manse, and stream, dimly my thought defines. I only see a dream within a dream, the hilltop erst with pines. I only hear, above his place of rest, their tender undertone, the infinite longings of a troubled breast, the voice so like his own. There in seclusion and remote from men, the wizard hand lies cold, which at its topmost speed let fall the pen, and left the tale half told. Ah, who shall lift that wand of magic power, and lost the clue regain? The unfinished window in Aladdin's tower, unfinished, must remain. Next up we have Christmas bells. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then, from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound, the carols drowned, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent, and made forlorn the households born, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. I was enjoying that poem until the final stanza. Longfellow is kind of a hopeless optimist about some things. If I'm not mistaken, that poem was written about the Civil War, the United States Civil War, that is. Longfellow being an American poet. And he was alive during that time. That came after the bulk of his career. So that must have been a poem that he wrote a bit later. The next poem is called The Bells of Lynn. Heard it in a hand. O curfew of the setting sun, O bells of Lynn, O requiem of the dying day, O bells of Lynn. From the dark belfries of yon cloud cathedral wafted, your sounds aerial seem to float, O bells of Lynn. Borne on the evening wind across the crimson twilight, o'er land and sea they rise and fall, O bells of Lynn. The fisherman in his boat, far out beyond the headland, listens and leisurely rows ashore, O bells of Lynn. Over the shining sands, the wandering cattle homeward follow each other at your call, O bells of Lynn. The distant lighthouse hears, and with his flaming signal answers you, passing the watchword on, O bells of Lynn. And down the darkening coast run the tumultuous surges, and clap their hands and shout to you, O bells of Lynn, till from the shuddering sea, with your wild incantations, ye summon up the spectral moon, O bells of Lynn. And startled at the sight, like the weird woman of Endor, ye cry aloud, and then are still, O bells of Lynn. I think I will end it there. Give my voice a break for the night. And my brain, my poor little bare brain, all of this reading is a great stress on it. So, I hope you have found some relaxation and peace and a feeling of presence. And I hope you can carry that feeling with you into the rest of your day, or evening, or night.